The concepts of OP. So this is our very first class of OP. So before starting the code, let's talk about some basics of OP. So we already know that OP means object oriented programming. The first class we get a few idea about OP. So in the last class, basically about instance variable, instance method. I showed a small part about instance variable, instance method while reviewing the topics of CSE111. So let's start from the very beginning. So what is an object? So we know that OP is basically an object. So to know about an object, we have to know at first about what is a class and what is an object. So let's talk about class at first. All of us already know what is a class because in CC110 we have created multiple classes. So class is basically a template. Okay, so class, we can call class as a template or a design. So suppose this is a class. This is a human class. The name of the class is a human. So class is basically a design, a template, or a map. Okay, class is basically design, a template, or a map. Suppose you are an architect. You are an architect and you want to create or you want to build an apartment. So before building an apartment, at first you have to create a design or create a map of the apartment, right? Suppose there will be 3 bathrooms, 4 bedrooms. Where will be the bedroom allocated, and how will be the design of the entire apartment? So at first you will create a design, and based on the design, later you will actually build the apartment. So class is basically a design, a template. Suppose you want to create a pen. But before creating a pen, at first you need to mention the characteristic, or you have to list out the characteristics. What will be the features of a pen? Suppose what will be the color of a pen? What will be the height and length of the pen? Then whether it will be a ball pen or a gel pen or a fountain pen. So right. So before creating a pen, you need to know what will be the specifications of that pen. Or before building an apartment, at first you have to design how the apartment will look like. So class is basically a design, template, or map. And whenever we want to create a real life entity using that map or design, we can call it an object. ठीक है? Class is basically a map, design, or template. Again, suppose you are creating you want to create a pen. You want to create a pen, but before creating that pen, you need to specify that okay, the color of the pen will be blue, the height of the pen will be this, and that the pen will be pen will be a gel pen, or whether it will be a ball pen. So you have to specify the design at first. Okay, sir. Then when you are done with the specification, then you will start implementing the pen. So the design is basically known as a class, and whenever you are creating a real life entity based on that design, or if whenever you are creating a real life pen, or whenever you are building a real life apartment, that pen or that apartment is known as a object. So class is a design and object is a real life entity of that design. So in CSE110, basically whenever we used to create a class, at first we need to mention public class and name of the class, and after that we used to write the main method, right? And inside the main method, we were implementing the main function or main code that we are supposed to do. But in CSE111, you will get to know about 2 different types of classes. Okay. Let me write it first. The object is basically class is basically design, template, or map. It is a design template or map, and object is basically a real life entity. Real life entity of that design. In CSE110, we used to create a class, and inside that class, the mandatory thing was to write a method, a main method, because we know that main method is the one which is at first invoked whenever we compile and run the code. Right? আমরা যখন কোডটাকে রান করি, the main method is the one which basically gets invoked at the very first. So basically, in CSE111, you have to create 2 different classes. One class is known as a design class. We will be creating 2 different classes. One class will be a design class, and another class will be known as tester class or we can call it a driver code. Driver code. So we have to create a design class and we have to create a tester class or driver code. So what is a design class and what is a tester class? Okay, or what will the design class contain and what will the tester class contain? A design class is basically this one, where we have to implement or where we have to store or list out the specification of the object. Suppose you want to create a human. Okay, so if we want to create a human, we obviously need to know the characteristics of a human being. A human will have a name, an age, a gender, a birth date, and there will be some behaviors of a human. Suppose a human can walk, can talk. Suppose you want to add some behaviors of a human. Suppose walking, talking, gossiping, sleeping. So these are the behaviors. So all this specification, all these characters needs to be stored or listed down inside the design class. And whenever we want to create a real life human based on the information provided in the design class, we have to create an object. And when we want to create an object, the object creation must be done inside the tester class or the driver. Always remember, as design class is just a design, this is not a real life entity. Your design class won't contain a main method. ठीक है, से design class से there won't be any main method, there won't be any main method in the design class, so you can't run the design class. You will just list down the properties of a specific object inside the design class, but you can't run it because your design class won't have a main method. But if we want to create an object, it needs to be done inside the tester class, and I have to run my tester class. So obviously your tester class will have a main method. So no main method in the design class, but in the tester class there will be a main method. ठीक है सर? अच्छा, so we have seen two types of classes, design class and tester class. So let me recap it again. Class is basically a design where we will be storing or listing the features or characteristics of a specific object, and object is basically a real life entity. Whenever we are I am creating an object with the help of the characteristics or features specified in the design class, and we need to create two classes. One is a design class and one is a tester class. Design class will have the design only or the characteristics only. This class won't be executed. That's why there won't be any main method inside the design class. But tester class, inside the tester class, I will create an object. As I will create an object, I need to execute that code. And if I want to execute that code, so obviously my class should have a main method. That's why inside the tester class or the driver code, there needs to be a main method. It's mandatory to have a main method inside the tester class or driver code. Okay. So what can a design class contain? So I have already said that design class can contain some properties. Suppose for human being, there will be some name. So our design class will can contain some variables and some methods. A design class can contain some variables. We can call it as some attributes, as an attribute. Okay, attributes. A design class can contain some variables or attribute. Also, a design class can contain some behavior or methods. We already know about methods. In CSE110, we learned about static method. Okay, those methods were known as a static method because the syntax of creating a method was, at first we need to mention public, then we need to mention the static keyword, then name of the method, then the return type, and after that we need to mention the method. This is just like the same. Okay, what we have learned in CSE110. So a class can contain some variables or attribute. A class can contain some methods or behavior. Okay, একটা ক্লাসের ভেতরে হচ্ছে there can be some variables or attributes. A class can have some methods or behavior. So there can be different types of variable and different types of method. Okay, some variables will be known as instance variable, some variables will be known as static variable. Same for method. There can be some instance methods, static methods. We will learn all of them gradually. Okay, so for our today's class, we will be basically covering instance variable. What is an instance variable? How to create an instance variable? How to access it? How to update it? Okay. So, do any of you have any question till this part? এতটুকু পর্যন্ত কারো question আছে? Okay. If none of you have any question, so let's start. How can we create an design class, and how can we create an object? So suppose this is my design class. This is my human class. Now I will list down all the properties or behavior of a human which I want to create. Suppose I want to create, or suppose my human in this class, I want to create two variables. There will be two attributes of a human being. Suppose as a human will have a name. Definitely every human will have a name, and there will be another variable for his NID. So let's create two variables for this human class. Okay, so normally in CSE110, we already seen how to create a variable, or what is the syntax of declaring and initializing a variable. So suppose this is my main method. As this is my tester class, let's create a main method. Public static void main string args. Okay, so suppose I want to create a variable called name. So I need to mention it like this. At first I need to mention the data type of the variable, then I need to mention the name of the variable, and after that I have to put the value which I want to store inside the variable. This was the syntax of creating a variable or declaring and initializing a variable. Inside a design class, you have to follow the same rule. At first you need to mention the data type, then variable name, then value, but there is a slight difference. Before mentioning that data type, we need to mention access modifier. So what is the syntax of creating a variable in OP? Or basically, if you want to create an instance variable, so at first you need to mention the access modifier. So what is an access modifier? Okay, so I will be covering it a bit later. So this is, at first you need to mention the access modifier, then you need to mention the data type, then variable name, and then you need to mention the value. So this is the syntax of creating a variable or creating an instance variable. So let's talk about what is an access modifier. We already know about one access modifier. All of you already know one access modifier, which is public. So what is this? What is actually an access modifier mean? Suppose I am creating a variable name inside this human class. So I want to specify that who can access my name variable. So if I mention it as a public variable, that means all other classes can directly access the variable name. So basically it actually it's basically hiding the variable or hiding the property from a different class. Suppose if I consider a variable as a private variable, then none of the class will be able to access it, because this is my private property. So if I consider a variable as a public variable, that means any other class can directly access my variable. It's basically help me to keep track of the variable who can access the variable. I'm basically creating a scope of the variable. Okay, so this class can access my variable, that class can't access my variable. So this is basically accessing the, or highlighting the accessibility of that variable. That's why it is known as an access modifier. So there are basically 4 types of access modifier. We will be covering the full topic of access modifier before the midterm. So there are basically 4 types of access modifiers. The first one is public, then private, then protected, and last one is the default variable. But for now, as we don't know about these access modifiers, so for now we will be covering only public, or we will be always using public access modifier before the variable or the method name. ঠিক আছে? So এখন পর্যন্ত we don't need to know about what is private, what is protected, or what is a default, but every time I have to use public. So at first I need to mention public. Access modifier is always be public. Public means the variable I will be writing now can be accessible by anyone. Anyone means any other classes. So let's write a variable called name, string name equals to Ali. So I have just declared a variable name and initialized it with a default value which is Ali, and I have considered this variable as a public variable. That means anyone can access this name variable. Let's create another variable. Suppose I want to store the NID of a human being. So the data type of the NID will be integer, and I want to consider this variable as a public variable as well. So let's write it public int NID equals to suppose 1, 2, 3. This it's just a random value. I'm storing 1, 2, 3 as my default value or default or initial value of the NID. Okay. So this is a design class. Okay, my design class just contain two variables, one name and one NID. So now I want to use these properties by creating an object. Now we will learn how can we create an object. Previously I said that কিছু বলবেন কেউ? Okay, if any of you have any question, you can just unmute and ask, or if you want you can write it in the chat box. So previously we said that what is a design class? Design class will contain only the properties of a class, either some variables or some methods. So this is just my design class, but it is not a real life human. This is just a design. It's basically listing out the properties a human can have. But now I want to create an actual human. That means I want to create an object of the human. So to create an object of the human, I have to create an object inside the tester class, because my tester class will have a main method, and we know that to execute a code my class should have a main method. ঠিক আছে, so এখন আমি কি করব, I will create an object inside my main method or inside the tester class. So before creating an object, can anyone tell me what is the syntax of creating an object? If you just recall how we created an object in CSE111 specifically for the scanner class. When
we use the new word.
Okay, there was a keyword called new. Okay, let me write it. Let's recall. Whenever we were creating object of the scanner class, we used to write like this: public scanner is equals to new scanner, then system.in. System.in. Okay. So what was the scanner basically? Whether it is a variable name or method name, what was it?
It's word from the library.
Yes, it's a word from the library. It's basically a class name. There was a class name scanner inside the util package. Similarly, this is the class name. This is basically the name of the object, or we can consider this is the variable name. Then this is basically a reserved keyword new, and again this is a class name. So what is basically the syntax of creating an object? So at first you need to mention the class name. The object you want to create of the class. Okay, মানে যে ক্লাসটা আমি অবজেক্টটা বানাবো সেটা. So class name, at first you need to mention the class name, then you need to mention the object name, then you need to mention the new keyword, then again you need to mention the class name, and after that you need to give a parenthesis sign. Okay, so look here, while creating the object of a scanner class, we used to pass a value. We used to pass system.in inside the bracket. We were passing it. Also in CSE111, whenever you get to know about methods, we already know that some method can have some arguments. We can pass some values while calling a method. It's like that. Okay, so our class name, after writing the class name, inside the parenthesis sign you can pass some values. If you want, you can pass some values. If you don't want, there is no need to pass any values. So it basically depends on my requirement whether I want to pass any value or not. But this is the basic syntax of creating an object. So at first you need to mention the class name, then you need to mention the object name, then equal there, then you need to mention the new keyword, then you have to mention the class name again with a parenthesis sign. Again, you can pass some value or if you don't want, there is no need to pass any value. It basically depends on my requirement. And there is a specific name for this portion, this highlighted portion. This portion is known as constructor. Okay, what is a constructor? Constructor is basically help me to create an object. This highlighted portion, this portion is known as constructor. Constructor is a new topic. We will be covering it maybe after one or two classes. Okay, so this portion is known as constructor. So at first I need to mention the class name, the name of the object, then new keyword, and then the name of the class with a parenthesis sign, which is known as a constructor. Okay, also why do we need to use this new keyword? What is the purpose of using this new keyword? New keyword basically helps me to allocate a memory location for that object. Suppose this is my object and I want to store this object inside the memory location. So which location will be allocated is decided by this new keyword. New keyword, it helps me to allocate a memory location for the object. So now let's create an object of the human class. Okay, now I want to create an object of the human class. So obviously the first thing I need to mention the class name, as I am creating an object of the human class. So obviously I need to mention human at first. So let's write human. The second thing, I need to mention the name of the object. We can give any meaningful name, maintaining the variable naming convention. Okay, the name of the variable and name of the object is the same. We need to follow the naming convention. So let's take the name of the first object is h1. I am creating the first object and the name of the object is h1. So at first I mentioned the class name, then I mentioned the name of the object, then I need to give the new keyword, and after that I need to write the constructor, and constructor is basically the class name with a parenthesis sign. So again I need to mention human with a parenthesis sign. For now we won't be passing any values inside this parenthesis sign, but later we will know how can we pass some values. Okay, Ajan dichhe, take a break. Let's take a break for 5 minutes. The class will resume after 5 minutes. ঠিক আছে, একটু ওয়েট করি আজানটা শেষ হোক। Class. Okay, so I just have created a object of my human class. So what is the syntax of creating an object? At first I need to mention the class name, then name of the object, then I have to write the new keyword, which basically helps me to allocate a memory location for the object, and then I have to write the class name again with a parenthesis sign, and this portion, this highlighted portion, is known as a constructor. Okay, so let's create two different objects. The first one is h1. Let's create another one. Suppose my second object is h2. So these are the two created objects. Okay. Let's first compile it and save it. Always remember, okay, let me comment on this line first. Always remember you need to save the tester class and the design class in the same folder, because in the tester class we are creating an object of the human class or the design class, right? So you need to give the access of the access of the human class to the tester class. So if you don't store the two classes inside the same folder, my tester class won't have the access of the human class. Okay, so always remember you have to store the save the tester class and the design class inside the same folder. Look, here it is inside the T1. This is basically inside my OOP basis folder, then section 10 task T1, and inside the folder human class is stored, and same thing, human tested is also stored in the same folder. So always remember the tester class and the design class should be inside the same folder. Also, one error you will always face, some of you will try to run the design code. So okay, so if I compile it, it's properly compiling, but if I run my design class, it's basically showing this error. The error is showing that my class doesn't have any static void main method except in string. Yes, the error is properly showing because I haven't written any main method inside my design class. because I already know that my design class shouldn't have a main method. That's why I didn't write the main method. So you always remember, you don't need to run the design code. Okay, design code and run code. Now we will only compile it and save it, but we will run the tester class, which includes a main method. So if you ever try to run the design class, definitely it will show an error. Okay, so let's compile my design tester class and run it. It's properly compiled, and if I run the code, it won't show any output because I haven't printed anything. So let's print something. Let's print the newly created objects h1 and h2. System.out.println h1. Similarly, if I want to print the second object h2, I will just have to write h2 here. Okay, can anyone tell me what will be the output, or what will it print?
The location of H1 and H2.
Exactly, it will print the memory location of h1 and h2. Why? Because objects are considered as objects are basically a memory location. Okay, object means it's a memory location. Always remember, object mane hocche it's just a memory location. Object, you can consider object as a memory location, or reference or address. You can consider an object as a memory location or reference or an object, and we can call an object as an instance as well. Okay, object or instance, these are the same thing. If you call it as an object, and if you call it as an instance, both are same. Object or instance are basically the memory location. So look, whenever I'm printing h1 and h2 object, it's printing these two lines. Okay, the first thing is mentioned is human @ then there is a hexadecimal value. Why human? Because h1 and h2 are the object of a human class. If h1 and h2 were objects of a teacher class, then it should print teacher @ then the hexadecimal value. Okay, first thing, it's mentioning the class name, the name of the design class, and secondly, it's mentioning the memory location or the hexadecimal value. Okay, so let's trace this code. Suppose I just have executed this line, these two lines. So what will happen if I create an object like this? And basically what will happen in the background if I write these two lines? So let's trace this code. Okay, so let me clear it first. Whenever we create an object, it will follow some steps. At first, the very first thing, it will create a memory location for that object. Let's consider for the first one, it will do the same thing for the second one. So suppose there is one object. I have just created h1 object. The first thing it will do, it will allocate a memory location for each one object with the help of the new keyword. সবার প্রথমে হচ্ছে it will allocate a memory location. Okay, so let's allocate a memory location. Suppose this one is my h1 object, and we already know that this is the memory location of my h1 object, this one, this hexadecimal value. But as this is a complex value, instead of writing this hexadecimal value, we will consider a real life memory location for our আমাদের ভালোর জন্য আমরা এখানে basically we will consider our real life memory location. So suppose this is my h1 object, and I am considering the h1 is stored inside the BARDA memory location or BD memory location. So the first thing, it allocates a memory location for the h1 object. So obviously I need to specify where is the BD location. Suppose this is my BD location. This is the entire BD location. So my h1 object is inside the BD location, and this is my BD location. This was the first thing, it allocates a memory location for the object. Then secondly, it will create a copy of the variables of that specific object. We have taken two variables, name and id. So these are the two variables of that specific object or the human class. So it will allocate, or it will make a copy of this instance variable, these variables. So at first it will create a copy of the name variable inside this memory location. Similarly, it will create a copy of the NID variable inside the same memory location. First thing, it allocates a memory location. Second thing, it will create a copy of the variables of the design class. ঠিক আছে, ডিজাইন ক্লাসের যে ভ্যারিয়েবলগুলো মেনশন করা আছে, it will make a copy of the variables. Third thing, it will execute the constructor. Okay, this is my constructor, but we don't know what is a constructor. So constructor is basically a special type of method. We will learn about it later. But the third step is it will execute the constructor. Okay, the fourth thing is it will initialize the variables with the default values. First thing, it will allocate a memory location. Second thing, it will create a copy of the variables. Third thing, it will execute the constructor, but we are skipping this step because we don't know what is a constructor, but this one is basically the constructor. It will execute this portion. Okay, so after executing this portion, it will store, or it will initialize the variables with the default values. So I can see there are two default values stored inside this variable. For the name Ali store and for the NID 123 store. So inside that memory location, inside the BD location, the Ali and 123 will be stored. For the name, Ali will be stored, and for the NID 123 will be stored. These are the 4 steps. Okay. So whenever we create an object, it will follow 4 steps. At first, allocating a memory location. Second one is creating a copy of the variables. Third one is executing the constructor. And fourth one is basically before executing the constructor, it will initialize the variables with the default values. It will do the same thing for the second object. So let's allocate a different memory location for the each 2 object. Suppose H2 is inside India. Okay, so the first H1 is inside the BD location, and the second one is inside the India location. So let's consider this location is India. So inside, at first it allocated a memory location. The second step is it will create a copy of the variables. So as there are 2 variables, name and NID, so I have to create a copy of the same variable inside a different memory location. So এখানে name এর একটা copy create করবে, and similarly it will create a copy of the NID here. Third step is it will execute or it will call the constructor, but we're skipping this step because we don't know what is a constructor. Third step is this portion will be executed, and before executing this line or before executing the body of the constructor, it will initialize the variables with the default values. As the default values are Ali and 123, so it will store Ali and 123 for this location, inside this location. Okay, so now let's check. As I have just said that name Ali and 123 stored inside this India location and inside this BD location. Let's check whether it is actually stored. Okay, let me write a line first, then I will ask a question. Can I write it like this? Can I print name directly like this? কেন পারবো না?
কারণ মেইন মেথডে তো আর কি নেই নেম ভেরিয়েবল।
এক্স্যাক্টলি, I want to access the variable name. এখান থেকে আমি দেখতে পাচ্ছি I have allocated I have stored 2 variables, name and NID, and basically I want to print this Ali. But I can't directly write name, or I can't directly print name here because there is no name variable inside my tester class. Obviously, if I try to print this line, it will show an error that name variable is not defined. Look, cannot find symbol variable name. But there is a name variable inside the BD location and inside the India location. So if I want to print or access the name variable, I need to specify the location at first. Suppose I want to print the name variable of human1, which is inside the BD location. So if I want to access the name of human1, then I need to mention the object first, then I have to call the variable. So as I want to access the name of the human one, and human one is basically h1. So I have to write h1 dot name. It's just same like the arrays dot length. For the array class we used to write whenever we try to whenever we use the length variable of the array class. Suppose there is a variable called arr. We used to write like this, array dot length. This is the same thing. Array was an object because arrays are considered as an object in Java. Similarly, h1 is an object, and I want to call the attribute or variable of the object, which is stored inside the bd location. That's why I need to specify the location first, as locations are tracked using this h1 and h2 variable, and I want to specifically access the name of the bd location. That's why I'm calling it like this, h1 dot. Similarly, if I want to access the nid, then I have to write h1 dot nid. h1 dot nid. Okay. Okay. So as these variables are called with respect to the object, or if this is basically the syntax, I have to write the name of the object dot variable name. If we call a variable with respect to an object or an instance, we already know, I have already mentioned that we can consider as object as an instant. Object and instance are the same thing. So whenever we call a variable with respect to an object or an instance, those variables are known as instance variable. That means as I have to call name and id with respect to an object, that's why the name and id are known as an instance variable. There are different types of variable: instance variable, static variable. But as this is an instance variable, and instance variable are called with respect to an object or instance. যখন আমি কি করব, অবজেক্টের নাম dot variable name, this variable is known as an instance variable. Same for the method. If I call a method with respect to an object name, then that method will be known as an instance method. Okay. So let's compile my code and run it. If I compile h1.name and h1.id, so obviously it should print alien 123. Look, alien 123 is printed. Similarly, if I want to access the name and id of human 2, I can just write it like this, h2.name, h2.id. So obviously it will print the same thing, alien 123, because the default values of h1 and h2 are alien 123. Okay. But in real life, this is not possible that the name and NID of two different human beings are the same, right? Actual মানুষের তো it can be, the name can be same, but NID can't be same. So obviously, now I want to update the name and ID. Suppose the name and ID of the first human being is alien 123, but I want to update the name and ID of the second human being. So let's update it. How can I update it? The approach is the same. At first I need to access the variable, then I have to give the equal sign, and then I have to assign the value which I want to store inside that variable. I want to update the name of h2 human being, so I need to write h2.name. Suppose the name of my second human is Bob. Okay, I just have updated the name of my h2 object. Similarly, if I want to update the NID of the second object, suppose this is 456. Okay. Can anyone tell me, I have just updated the name of h2 object, but will it update the name of h1 object automatically? Or the name of the h1 object will remain the same, Ali?
It will remain the same.
It will remain the same. This is basically the benefit of using OP, because using OP, we are using basically two variables. If I want to create 100 humans, then if I don't use OP, I need to create 100 variables for 100 humans, 100 names variable, 100 NID variables. But here I'm using two variables, but I'm storing these variables in different locations, so I can update them individually. I want to update the name of the first human, so I can update it. But if I don't want to update the name of the second human, So there is no need to update that. It will store the same. It will remain same. So here I have just updated the name of the second human and the ID of the second human. So let's trace it again. So initially, or up to this line, the name and ID of the second human was Alien 123. But after that, I have updated the name and NID. So let's update the name. So the previous value will be updated by Bob only for the second object, which is inside the India location. Similarly, the NID of the second object will be updated to 456. As we know, whenever we are updating a value, we have to cut the previous value. So I have cut the previous value and updated the value. So look, this location, the variables inside this location is updated, but the previous one remains same. So if I print, wait. So if I print the name and NID of H2 object after updating this line, so it will definitely show Bob and 456. It is. Previously it was Alien 123 before updating the value, and after updating the value it is Bob at 456. But the value of the first object, the name of the first object remains the same. It is Ali because I haven't updated the value of the first object. Look, this one is the same. Okay. So up to this portion, do any of you have any question? কোয়েশ্চেন থাকলে করতে পারেন, যিনি সেটা বুঝি নাই বা এটাতে কোনো সমস্যা। Do any of you have any question? Okay, so let me recap everything. So at first we get to know what is a class. Class is basically a design, okay, where I have to store the characteristics of a specific object. A class can contain some variables or some attributes. Variables are basically the attributes. A class can also contain some methods or behavior. Variables or attribute means name, ID, this thing. Behavior, walking, talking, gossiping, these are the behavior, or this is the methods of a class. So our design class can contain some variables and some methods. Design class is basically just a template. It's a template, it's not a real life entity. That's why there won't be any main method inside the design class. But whenever we want to create real life entities based on the design class, we have to create them inside the tester class. And tester class, we have to execute the tester class. That's why my tester class should have a main method. It is mandatory to have a main method in the tester class, but we don't need to write a main method in the design class. Okay, second one is how can we create an object? This is the basic syntax of creating an object. At first I need to mention the name of the class, the name of the object, then new keyword, then name of the class again with a parenthesis sign, and this portion is known as a constructor. Okay, so what is the purpose of using new keyword here? New is basically helping me to allocate a memory location for that object. So as I want to create an object of the human class, I have to mention human, then name of the object is h1, then I have to write the new keyword to allocate a memory location for the h1 object, and then I mention the constructor or the class name with a parenthesis sign. So whenever we create an object, it basically follows 4 steps. At first, it will allocate a memory location for that object. Second thing, it will create a copy of the variables which are stored inside the design class. Okay, it will create a copy of the instance variables. As there were 2 instance variable, name and ID, it created 2 copies of the name and ID. The third thing is it will execute the constructor. But before executing the body of the constructor, it will basically assign the default values. Okay, it will basically initialize the variables with the default values. As the default values are alien 123, it initialized the name and NID with alien 123. So these are the basic 4 steps. It will do the same thing for each and every object. If there are 4 objects, it will do the same thing for these 4 objects, but everything will be done inside different memory location. For each and every object, it will allocate a different memory location. Okay. Then if I want to access an instance variable, how can we access it? We have to call an instance variable with respect to an object. So at first I need to mention the name of the object, then I have to mention the name of the variable. So as I want to access the name variable of my h2 object, that's why I have written h2.name. Similarly, I want to access the NID of my h2 object, that's why I have written h2.name. Okay. Question আছে কারো এখানে কোনো? Do any of you have any question? Okay, if none of you have any question, let's see another problem. This one was a human class and we have created object of the human class. Let's create another class. Suppose I want to create a faculty class. So I want to create a design class whose name will be faculty, and I will create two real life entities of the faculty class. So let's create the design class first. Public class faculty. This is my design class. And let's create another tester class, public class faculty tester. Okay, one more thing, it's not mandatory to have the word tester inside the tester class name. Okay, it's not mandatory. মানে এখানে যে tester নামটা দিতেই হবে, it's not mandatory. But as this is a tester class of the faculty class, that's why I have written tester here. But it's not mandatory that you have to write tester or you have to give it tester in the tester class name. So this is the left one is my design class and the right one is my tester class, and we already know that my tester class should have a main method. So let's write the main method, public static void main class. So this is the body of my main method. Okay, now I want to design the faculty class. At first I will be listing out which properties I want the faculty to have. Suppose a faculty will have an initial and a pin number. Okay, so let's write two variables. One will be for the initial and one will be for the pin number. So to declare and initialize a variable, at first we need to mention the access modifier, and we know that there is an access modifier which is public. Public means the variables can be accessible by anyone. The variable is accessible to anyone. Anyone can access this variable. So let me write first at public. Access modifier is public. Then I need to mention the name, data type of the variable. So I want to create a variable for the initial. So let's write the data type of the variable. So initial will be definitely a string variable. Then name of the variable, which will be initial, and suppose I haven't stored any value initially. For the previous task, we have initialized or we have stored the default value. Ali was stored inside the name variable, but for this task I haven't initialized any value or I haven't stored any default value. Can anyone tell me what will be the default value, or if I print initial, what will be the value? Null, because we know the default value of a string variable is null. So আমি যদি এখানে initialটা print করি, if I print initial, then it will print null. Okay, similarly let's take another variable for the pin number, int pin, and again the default value of the pin will be 0. So my faculty class will have two instance variable. One is the initial and the second one is pin number. Okay, so let's create two objects of the faculty class. So at first I need to mention the class name. As I want to create an object of the faculty class, so definitely the name of the class will be faculty. So faculty. Let's create some meaningful task, meaningful object. So let's create one object kni. Kni equals to new faculty. This one. I just have created one object. Previously the name of the object was h1 h2, and here I have created a new object and the name of the object is kni. Similarly, let's create another object. Suppose the second one is msi. I just have created two objects. The first one is kni and the second one is msi. Okay, let's trace the code. Okay, so let me copy that table. Okay, let's trace the code. So I just have created two objects. Let's remove everything. Achha. Okay, so there are two objects. I just have created KNI object and MSI object. So let's do the work for the KNI object. So we know at first it will allocate a memory location. So suppose the KNI object is stored inside the Badda memory location. The name of the location is Badda. Okay, so the first task is done. Second task is it will make a copy of the instance variable inside this location. So as a KNI object is stored inside Badda location, so I am assuming this is the Badda location. The whole table is basically the Badda location. So I have to create a copy of the instance variable inside the Badda location. So as there are two instance variable, the first one is initial and the second one is pin. So I have created a copy of the initial and the pin variables. The second task is done. The third task is to call the constructor or execute the constructor, but we are skipping that portion as we don't know what is a constructor and how does it look like. So we are skipping that portion, but after executing or after executing the body of the constructor, it will initialize the default values. It will store the default values of the variables, or it will initialize the variables with the default values. As I haven't initialized it with a default specific values, but we already know the default value of a string will be null and the default value of an integer will be 0. So the initial value of the initial variable will be null and the initial value of the pin variable will be 0. Basically, the whole thing is done because of this line. Only for this line, the previously executed portion has done. Object create column, allocated a memory location, created a copy of the variables, call the constructor, and then store the default values inside the variable. I have to do the same thing for the second object. Same কাজটা আমি এখন MSI objectের জন্য করব. So let's allocate a memory location for the MSI object. Suppose this is Gulshan memory location. Gulshan. So I have to specify the Gulshan location. This is my Gulshan location. And inside this location, I have to create a copy of the instance variable. There are two instance variables in initial and pin. The third step is constructor will be called, but before executing the body of the constructor, it will store the default values. The default value of the initial variable is null and the default value of the pin variable is 0. Okay. Now I want to update the value of my, because I haven't stored any specific value. So the default values are null and 0, but now I want to store the values inside the variable. So let's update the initial of the KNI variable. So if I want to access the initial variable of the KNI object, I need to specify where the KNI location is. That means I have to mention that this is my KNI object. At first go to that location, access that variable and then update it. Okay, there are two initial variables. Okay, I need to specify which one I want to update. That's why I need to specify the location first. That go to that location, go to Badda location and then update the initial variable which is stored inside the Badda location, not inside the Gulshan location. Okay, so let's update it. To access an instance variable, we have to write first the name of the object, then dot sign, then we have to write the name of the variable. So if as I want to update the value initial of the KNI variable, so KNI dot initial equals to KNI, and similarly KNI dot pin, suppose my pin is 1 2 3 4, this. Similarly, let's update the initial and pin of MSI object. MSI dot initial equals to MSI and MSI dot pin equals to 5 6 7 8. So as I'm updating the variables, so obviously the updated value will be stored inside the trace table. So let's update it. So I just have updated the initial value of the kni variable to kni. Okay. And the pin of the kni variable is 1234. Similarly, MSI to update করে ফেলি. I have to update the initial and the pin of MSI variable. So I have to cut the previous value. কেটে দিলাম the previous value. Now I have to update the MSI variable. MSI and the pin was, I guess, 6789. Okay, so I just have updated the name and the initial and the pin number. Pin কি রেখেছিলাম, আচ্ছা 5678 5678. Okay, so let's print and check whether the value has updated properly or not. System.out.println information. I'm just printing a dummy line to separate the two information of kni. Okay, now I want to print the name, print the initial and the pin number of kni. So system.out.println kni.initial. Similarly, I want to print the pin number of kni, so obviously I have to write kni.pin. I have to do the same thing for the MSI object. Information of MSI, and I just have to replace kni with MSI. Okay, so let's compile the code and run it. Okay, so I previously have said that you have to store the two classes, the design class and the tester class, needs to be stored inside the same folder. Okay, so let's create another folder for task 2, and inside this folder I'm storing the faculty class. Okay, let's comment it out. Okay, this is my faculty class, and I have to store the faculty tester class inside the same folder t2, and this is my faculty tester. Okay, so let's run the code. Okay, information of kni 1234, and information of MSI then 567. So if I print this portion before executing or before updating the name and pin, definitely it will initially show null and 0, because the initial or the default value was a null and 0. So if I print it, look, the initial was the values were previously null and 0, and after updating it the values are this kni 1234, and for MSI it is MSI 5678. Any question so far? কারো কোনো কোয়েশ্চেন থাকতে বলতে পারেন।
ম্যাম ওই সেম ফোল্ডারে যে সেভ করে ওইটা একটু আবার দেখেন।
আচ্ছা, what will happen, একটা মিনিট। ওকে, আচ্ছা না, এটা ভাবে থাক। Let's store the faculty class in a different folder. Okay, আচ্ছা, আমি একটু স্ক্রিনটা অফ করে, let me first delete the faculty class first, then store it inside a different folder. একটা মিনিট।